Hi, everybody. I know we may still have a few people logging on to join us, but I wanted to go ahead and get started by welcoming everybody to today's webinar, The Data Behind the Drive, Maximizing Fuel Efficiency with TrueFuel. I'm Gabby Parker, and I'm here with Ethan Sweeney, our TrueFuel expert. For everyone who has made time in their busy day to be with us today, welcome and thank you for hanging out with us for the next hour or so. We hope that this webinar will leave you ready to learn how TrueFuel transforms real-world trip data into fair driver-specific fuel efficiency metrics using a custom model built around your fleet. Before we get to that, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. This webinar will be recorded and sent to you within the next 24 hours, so don't worry if you get interrupted or have to jump off the call. You'll get the recording tomorrow so you can review at your own convenience. Next, I wanted to let you all know that we will be doing a Q&A session at the end, so please feel free to use the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel to ask any questions throughout the webinar so we can get to that. With all that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Ethan and let him get this show on the road.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gabby. And I'd like to echo Gabby's thanks here and just thank you all for joining us or watching us as we start to talk about TrueFuel. So let's go ahead and jump right in. When I was putting this together, I was thinking about how I could add value to your day and came up with a plan to essentially walk through a new client implementation of the tool. Intended benefit here is that not only will you learn all about the efficiencies and benefits gained with TrueFuel, but it's also directly tied to the best practice recommendations in the industry and beyond for the introduction or change management of a program aimed at creating a significant and meaningful change. In this case, with TrueFuel, it'll be with fuel behaviors and with the end goal of reducing fuel consumption. Okay. So I'm going to kick things off here by sort of outlining the problems that you all as fleets face as it pertains to fuel. We'll talking about prices, the data that's available, fuel performance, and fuel waste. We'll get into how TrueFuel solves those, touch on some of the tool sets, and this is going to help set the stage for the meat and potatoes of it, which will be operationalizing, implementing, and managing a successful fuel program. And then I'll also share some additional side benefits that you're likely to realize and some sample successes. And the goal with that is hopefully you can learn and then adapt them to best fit your operational needs. Okay. So starting out, the first challenge that you as fleets are all up against, and I imagine this slide creates an initial immediate reaction, the price of fuel. And I hope Gabby doesn't mind. She helped me format these slides. I just saw this morning and added it to the deck late in the game here, so I'm sorry if any of the formatting is not up to snuff here. But I wanted to share it because it really tells a story of the challenges and hurdles that our clients and partners are up against with respect to fuel prices. The prices are high. I mean, especially compared to last year and the year before. Prices are very high. And as you can see, since March, a great sort of representation of the volatility of the market, the ebbs and flows of the prices, the peaks, the valleys, and then jumping back up again this past week. National average went up again another 17 cents. And so the volatility has got to be, I know it's causing some gray hairs on my side of this webinar. I imagine it's creating some pain points for you all as well. And then the last thing is, so with fuel prices, it's very much outside of your control as a fleet, right? Yes, you can absolutely negotiate and definitely encourage any fleet to negotiate lower prices or rates with preferred vendor partners. But I'm imagining that the rates you negotiated last year have likely still been impacted by the recent market changes here. And so while it's still lower than, I personally would pay at the pump, it's still, high relative to the history of where we have been. So that's sort of challenge number one, fuel prices. Challenge number two is we're going to start to dig into the data side of a fuel program here. And so I absolutely love MPG and believe it is an absolutely necessary metric, but there's also some downfalls with it where it doesn't tell us the entire story so that we can generate or implement a meaningful program at reducing our fuel consumption and fuel costs, right? Pro con list is how I always like to sort of break these things down. So the pros, uh, MPG provides a phenomenal understanding of your operating expenses. It is tied directly to fleet financials. So huge pro right out of the gate. The second is that it's readily available through virtually all ELD providers. So if you're running ELD, if you're running any in-cab technology, you likely have this MPG metric coming directly to your environment, to your network, to your system. And it is a legacy metric. It has been the key metric that we've all centered up on for years and years. I've been in the industry specifically on the tech side for 15 years, give or take. And I knew about MPG as a metric probably 15, 20 years before that, right? It's actually, when I was putting this together, I remembered learning about miles per gallon from my parents. They would actually track it in their cars, and they kept a little notebook in the glove box, and would do the math based on the odometer and how much fuel they just put in. So that was a funny little walk down memory lane. But MPG is absolutely a legacy metric, and it's not going anywhere. So it's phenomenal to have. The challenges are where it doesn't sort of fit the bill or pass the test here is it is heavily impacted by variables outside of your control on the fleet side, driver's control in the field, and it's also not an apples to apples comparison because of that. So if Gabby and I are working for the same carrier and we're in the same year, make, model, spec truck, but we have two different customer routes with two different load weights, with two different traffic patterns, MPG is not really going to be fair for assessing our performance with respect to fuel. So a challenge there. It also is lacking in that it doesn't tell you where opportunities exist. It is sort of a paramount metric that we absolutely have to keep in mind, but it doesn't say, hey, if you took the path of XYZ, you could actually increase your MPG, right? So there's some gaps in visibility to opportunities there. And as a lagging indicator, we can be and absolutely should be setting fuel economy goals because it ties directly to the bottom line of the business. But it is a lagging indicator. We do have to wait until the time frame passes to see if we hit our mark or not. So that's the second challenge. Okay. The third one, and this is a super common thing that I've heard from talking with fleets in the space, is that personnel and capacity, right? Everybody is stretched pretty thin. Everybody's wearing a lot of different hats, has a lot of ongoing projects, competing priority projects, right? And so the time and opportunity to create a program from scratch is really difficult, right? And so that's why I'm excited to share some insight into True Fuel here, because I think of it as a recipe. I consider it an out of the box solution that is directly tailored towards reducing fuel consumption and fuel waste. That comes with a lot of automations, a lot of efficiencies, and a lot of really actionable data and tool sets that are a lot easier to start with than if we were to try and develop a program from scratch. Okay. So we've covered the challenges, doom and gloom aside. Let's jump into the tool set, how True Fuel works, and then we'll start to operationalize how we're going to implement it into our fleet, our business, our operations. Okay, so the first thing here, and this is going back, touching on our MPG pro con list here just a minute ago. Everything you see on the screen here, and there's a bunch of stuff that's likely not included, does have an impact on your fuel economy, how many miles you get per gallon. If we think load weight, hauling heavy versus hauling light, tire wear, if we think the speed at which our drivers are traveling, the terrains that they're traversing, the weather that they're up against, the time of day with their schedule. Is there heavy traffic during the day versus minimal traffic overnight? The shape or sort of truck spec or the load spec, depending on the trailer types. List goes on, right? But everything here is going to have an impact on your MPG. So one quick reminder, this is why it's not a good metric for assessing driver performance. It also isn't a good metric for apples to apples comparison of opportunities, right? So instead, where True Fuel focuses is going to be on driver behaviors. So studies continue to show, even in the latest and greatest modern drivetrain technology, there have really been some cool advancements in the industry with the tech available in cab and on the road. There's still up to a 30% impact on how much fuel a driver is going to consume with that truck, right? If we think of it, if I have a driver that consumed 100 gallons, up to 30 gallons of that could have been wasted due to these four behaviors. Now, TrueFuel centered up on these four behaviors because they are the behaviors that have the biggest impact on how much fuel a truck is going to consume. If we think just starting out idle management, as our truck is sitting there, if it is running and idling, we're consuming fuel while the truck may not being used for work. As we're getting the load up to speed, that's going to be the acceleration piece. And to tie this home, if you hop in your personal vehicle and mash on the throttle to 100% all the way to the floor, you're going to consume way more fuel than if you ease into the throttle and let the engine use all the power it has to get you up and moving. Similarly, once we're on the highway, what is our sort of top speed that we're traveling with? Are we exceeding a fleet set speed threshold, or are we even simply traveling at higher speeds because there's going to be a significant increase in the amount of fuel consumed to maintain those high speeds? And then also speed consistency. I find myself personally, anytime I'm on the highway and it is safe to do so, I use cruise control all the time. And my personal, fuel performance is better than when I don't, because there's slight variations in throttle control based on, driver behavior and what they're seeing in the environment that is going to have an impact on how much fuel a truck consumes. And so True Fuel focuses up on this, and it does this by integrating with our telematics partners. So we're getting direct data directly from the trucks, directly from the environment in which these drivers are operating in. And those integration partners, just for awareness, are Geotab, Motive, Samsara, and Trimble, and Platform Science. Trimble is now part of Platform Science, but I just like to make sure to clearly state both of those as well. And we also have the ability to use data directly from our Driver Pulse app or our Pulse at Work app that will help in this effort here by assessing driver fuel performance with respect to these behaviors. And where True Fuel is really unique is that it can use that real world data and actually quantify the amount of fuel that drivers are wasting due to inefficient operation of these four behaviors. Okay, so going back to the example, I have a driver that used 100 gallons. Let's say they only wasted 10. So that to me is 90% of the fuel was used for work, 10% was wasted due to, let's say, heavy throttle activity and idling at customer sites. With True Fuel, now that I have the ability to actually quantify the impact, now I'm starting to get visibility into where I can act or where I can take action to start reducing fuel consumption. So immediately we're already bridging data visibility or opportunity visibility gaps compared to just a traditional MPG metric, which is great. And I'll also sort of carry on the topic here by showing a real common real world situation that our clients are up against. So in this example, and it's not based on client data, but it's based on my experience with clients, is we have two drivers working for the same company, but they have different routes, they have different load types, they have different responsibilities, they have different traffic concerns and impacts on their day-to-day. And so they are just set up inherently to achieve different fuel economies based on all of those variables outside of their control. But now that we have True Fuel, where True Fuel helps us to bridge that gap and identify opportunities where we can save fuel, is going to be because of that quantification of fuel waste. So, perfect example here. Driver number one on the left-hand side, long haul, OTR, heavy load, predominantly spending time on the highway. That just inherently sets this driver up to get a higher fuel economy or MPG than driver two, because driver two is doing city roads. They're doing pickup and delivery, a lot of starts and stops, a lot of accelerations, opportunities, and a lot of traffic, right? Just because the natural environment that we're in. And so driver number one, 7.5 MPG. Uh, Sounds phenomenal, especially if we were to try and compare it to driver number two. But using True Fuel and using the ability to quantify the amount of fuel that these drivers are losing or consuming unnecessarily due to those four behaviors, again, acceleration, idle, speed management, and speed consistency, we can see that driver number one could have achieved what we call a potential MPG of 8.2. So we know how much fuel they consumed, how far they traveled. Now with True Fuel, we know how much fuel they consumed, how far they traveled, and how much fuel was wasted due to inefficient operation. We can True Fuel provides directly in the applications and the reports the potential MPG or the MPG that the driver could have achieved with zero fuel waste. In this case, there's a significant spread between the actual and potential MPG. So in this case, easy math, if this driver used 100 gallons, 9% of those 100 gallons were wasted due to inefficient operation, just because of those four behaviors. Whereas driver number two was only able to achieve a 6.4, but they had really efficient operation with respect to acceleration. They weren't letting the truck sit there and idle. They never exceeded the fleet set speed ask and efficient cruising while out on the road. This driver, out of the 100 gallons they consumed, only wasted 2. So now, because we have the actual MPG and the potential MPG they could have achieved without any fuel waste, we can figure out the resulting efficiency. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So now, with True Fuel, we started to solve the problem of a lack of visibility into opportunities, right? We're focused up on driver behavior because there's a 30% opportunity for fuel waste with driver behavior. And we're also getting into the individual driver behaviors that have the biggest impact on fuel consumption. And it's quantified in gallons, so we know exactly how much opportunity is on the table. And because we're solely focused up on those driver behaviors that are under their control, rather than assessing them based on things that are impacted by their load weight, their traffic, and their routes, we're solely focused on their behavior. We now have a fair driver efficiency metric to start and level the playing field and accurately and fairly assess an apples to apples comparison of driver performance. Okay. So that's sort of the underlying nuts and bolts of how we're going to start to operationalize and start to shape a successful fuel program using True Fuel technology. Let's start to walk through how we're going to implement it for our fleet. And so, like I mentioned, I've been working in the industry with technology specifically for 15 years. And what I'm going to share here are going to be the best practices that I've learned, that I've seen be successful, and that I've collaborated with clients on. And the benefit here is that not only will you get some visibility into a successful True Fuel implementation program, but all the steps that we're going to talk about here are directly aligned with best practices in the industry for any change management, any program introduction. And so I'm hoping they're adding additional value here as well. Okay. So the first step, and this slide's going to fill up with a few more things here, but I wanted to keep our focus on single subject at a time. So first step here is going to be to enable. So with True Fuel, because it's a software-based solution, it's simply enablement of software over the air or via an API token in the back end. My personal recommendation is based on experience, roll it out across the entire fleet. One, it gives you visibility to all of your trucks, all of your drivers, and all of their performances. But now you have the whole picture of your fleet's operating expenses with respect to fuel and opportunities towards fuel savings, right? So fleet-wide is always my recommendation. With True Fuel, it's either an over-the-air software update or simply giving True Fuel programmatic read-only access to your data with your integrated telematics provider. It's read-only, whether it's an over-the-air software update to the app or if it's API, so it's passively listening to data from your trucks and drivers out in the field. And one of my favorite things, something that we continue to learn from our fleet clients and continue to adapt and grow from, is the ability to configure parameters around True Fuel. No one fleet is the same as another out there, right? So even if it's as simple as just saying there's two fleets and one of them has a higher allowed speed threshold than another, or a longer allowed idle duration than another, or one has a temperature-based idle policy compared to one that does not. TrueFuel has the ability to configure all of the parameters that it's going to use to assess driver behavior and quantify opportunity for fuel savings based on your operational configuration, based on your operational needs. Okay. So really customizable as it pertains to your business. The next piece here is going to be what I call define and collect. So as we're figuring out how to workshop this and roll this out to our organization, to our fleet, I always find it's helpful to come up with a bulleted list of these are the pieces of collateral that we need in order to create a successful implementation, to train our drivers, to train our folks that are going to be involved with this program, and to train anybody who's going to be looking at this data. Now, one of the benefits here is with TrueFuel, we have a vast library and it is all directly tied to those four behaviors that the drivers have the biggest impact on with respect to their performance and fuel consumption. And they're all designed to be easily available no matter what the technology is. So whether it's mobile first, whether it's on the in-cab ELD tablet, whether it's supporting collateral for posting in break rooms like posters or printouts to be left in cab or even PDFs to make available to drivers. The training library inside of TrueFuel is really aimed at enabling you to simply fill in the blanks with a lot of this communication, a lot of this training that is going to essentially be the foundation from which we're going to build our program. Okay. Now, the next piece here is to communicate. So we've kicked off our software. We have visibility into fuel performance across the fleet. It is aligned with our operational parameters, so we know it's accurate to how we as a business need to and decided to operate. We've also come up with a list of who's involved with this program and what pieces of collateral do we need to educate them on how they're going to be participating, what we're trying to accomplish, and when. The next piece is to disseminate that information out to the field. We have to communicate. And so as part of the defining process, and I'm sorry I didn't touch on this during that, while we're looking to identify what we're going to put out into the field for training, we should also look to identify what tools do we have for disseminating this information out to the field. Imagining there's multiple operators potentially at different offices, different job sites, different terminals. There's also drivers that may not be able to come into the office as often as as others. And so what technology do we have inside our fleet, inside our tech stack to help disseminate that information that we're now collecting? And then when we take action on that, we're communicating the importance of the program across the entire fleet to the entire organization, all the players that are going to be involved, and clearly setting expectations. Okay, so in this, and there's actually a template that the True Fuel training package has to help shape this. We want to be able to answer, what are we doing? Where are we doing it? And how are we doing it? So an example, we as an organization have to take action towards reducing our fuel consumption. That's what we're doing. Where we're doing it is with driver behavior. And so in the trucks and using data to help educate drivers and educate trainers. And then the how is going to be the tactics. Are we using a regular communication path through messages? Are we doing one-on-one face-to-face? Are we simply going to talk to the top 10 and bottom 10? Clearly setting expectations is going to help get those drivers to buy into the program, because now you're aligning their expectations with how you're going to execute your program. Okay. So we've gotten the information, we've made the introduction, folks are aware of what we're doing, who's involved, and how we're going to go about it. The next piece is to kick off that training. So we're going to use the training library that True Fuel has provided, or if you've created your own based on the best practices that True Fuel helps share, then awesome. We're going to get that out. A best practice here is, in my opinion, it's really helpful to spread load the effort here. So I always recommend what I call a train the trainer approach. So there might be one or two or a handful of project owners responsible for disseminating information, tracking data, making program recommendations and changes, program decisions. It's also helpful to spread load the effort of answering driver questions, closing driver feedback loop with the drivers directly. And so I typically call those driver trainers. And so I like to start by introducing this program and this technology to those driver trainers, because they're going to be the first stop shop for all the drivers that might have a question on, what does this metric mean? Or, hey, I'm on this specific route on 90 in Western New York, and I always find myself in this situation. How can I change it? How can I do better? And so starting with that team, the trainers, spread loads the effort. So now it's just not a small focus team, but a larger team. We're going to make them the subject matter experts on not only our program, but also our technology. And so that way they are the first stop shop. If and when they have a question that they don't know the answer to, they elevate it up to you as a project team. Awesome. It's working as designed. But spread loading the effort and making subject matter experts out in the field goes a long way with helping to bridge any knowledge gaps or create training opportunities for our drivers. Then we want to execute our driver training. So with our driver training, how are we going to get this in front of our drivers? Do they come into the office, say, for example, for a weekly uh, safety meeting, or a daily departure meeting, or even a monthly safety training? Or are they pretty consistently on the road, and getting this information out to all of those drivers is going to be very challenging? If that's the case, recommend using digital. So can we get it out through video? TrueFuel comes with a number of videos. If it's on videos, can we put it directly on the ELD tablets in cab with TrueFuel? The answer is yes. If it's going to be on the ELD cab, can we make it something drivers can access more than once, revisit a training? Are there additional training pieces that we can put on that ELD tablet as a post-training reference, or an in-cab reference card, right? And with TrueFuel, we can do all of those things. So it's starting with all the foundational tools for a successful program by making it adaptable to fit whatever your operational needs and requirements are. Okay, so the last piece here is going to be the management piece. So if we've kicked off our program, we've told everybody, hey, heads up, this is the program that we're going to be doing. We've given everybody the training, so now they all know how the technology is going to work and the intended benefits, and our ask for help of them with changing their behaviors. Now we want to manage the program. And so here, I always find it really helpful to, after we execute an implementation, let's do a quick postmortem. And that's simply saying, hey, let's go through our plan. Let's go through our actual implementation and see, is there anything that we missed? Is there anything that created a number of questions that we can do better at answering in potentially a future communication? Is there a common theme that we need to consider and potentially change a setting or change something about our program? So those rollout sort of post follow-up meetings, those postmortems there are a great opportunity to learn uh, where can we improve together. And then using our communication channels, I always recommend communicating what any potential changes uh, coming out of this program are going to be. Now, there might not be. You might have a successful implementation right out of the gate, but now we also have those communication channels so that we have feedback loops. Drivers can ask us questions if they don't fully remember or fully understand how to change their day-to-day operation, so that they're leveraging this technology to the best of their ability in creating the fuel savings that we all as a business are looking for. So typical onboarding process, as I mentioned at the top of the call here, this is the playbook that I always recommend with all of my clients. We adapt and change things. Typically, it's going to be changing in the tool sets that we're using, whether it's in-person meetings or digital communications, or is it posted stuff in common areas and break rooms, or is it PDFs on the ELD tablet? But this basic methodology is how I always recommend. The other intended benefit here too is that I've been working in technology with commercial fleets for 15 years, and this is directly aligned with any change management program that I've collaborated with a fleet on. Way back in the day when I used to work for an ELD provider, we had fleets that were rolling out ELD for the very first time. They didn't have the predecessor technology, the AOBRD. This is essentially the same playbook that we ran with those fleets as well, and created a really successful implementation. So I'm happy to share this, and hopeful that it's helping add value to more than just the fuel program, but also helping shape any other programs you might have. Okay, cool. So a couple additional best practices as we're talking about programs, as we're talking about True Fuel specifically. Starting out, if we're leveraging our professional drivers and our managers, our trainers, it is very important that they're looking at the same data, that it's consistent. The delivery tools might be a little bit different. Managers might be using a back office web portal or an internal Power BI dashboard reporting system, but it's very important that the drivers are seeing the same data that the managers are seeing, for a couple of reasons. If there's any inconsistencies, there's going to be questions or surprises that come up with any follow-up conversation. So it's really helpful that if you and I are having a conversation about my fuel performance data, that you and I are looking at the same exact thing, because now that sets a foundation for me as the driver to be able to build from, right? And then I can there, since I have visibility to it, I can self-serve my own performance data moving forward. So in between our conversations, in between our meetings, in between our phone calls, emails, whatever that might be, you and I are looking at the same thing. I have a foundation of what this data means and how I can impact it and change it and improve upon it. And now I can be informed with how I'm doing with respect to the expectation. Okay. The next piece here, I personally love to automate as much as reasonably possible. When I say reasonably, I mean not trying to just Ronco rotisserie, set it and forget it kind of thing. But can we automate, for example, data collection? Can we automate disseminating of data and information and feedback? So for drivers, with True Fuel specifically, but also aligning with really helpful tactic of getting feedback to drivers. in real time or near real time. So it's resonating when they're out on the road in their environment. Automated coaching to drivers is incredibly helpful. If they can get feedback as close to, if not at the same time, as a behavior is occurring in cab, that's going to help educate them and learn how to adapt to using this technology to their benefit. The other piece for the back office folks, so any trainers or any fleet managers, can we automate the reporting? Can we automate the data mining and simply give the actionable data directly to the folks taking action on it? That's a great way to automate and save some time and save any guesswork. And I'll show you an example a little bit later how TrueFuel does this with automated reporting, where it actually puts the top and bottom performing drivers directly in trainers' email with the key metric that they're centered up on so that they know exactly who to congratulate and who to say, hey, I need your help. We have an opportunity for improvement here. Okay. And segue into the coach and celebrate. I have found that it is very important and very helpful in gaining driver input and feedback and buy-in to a program like this, any program, is to celebrate what they're doing well. So it might be a driver that's in our bottom performing group, but there's definitely things that they're doing well. And to help get them to buy into a program, it's really beneficial to celebrate what they're doing well. So example, if Gabby was my fleet manager and said, hey, Ethan, want to talk about your true fuel scores? It looks like you've done a great job at getting your idle time down over the past week or month. And so I want to say thank you for that. That's phenomenal. I also want to ask for your help in your acceleration behaviors because that's the number 2 area where you're losing fuel. And so, boom, immediately I'm invested because the efforts that I'm putting into this program, because the data is directly tied to my performance, are being seen and recognized and heard and appreciated. And I have a vested interest in making this program successful because I'm bought into it, because they're seeing the changes in the efforts that I'm making. And so now Gabby and I can have a conversation about my acceleration behavior using my real world data from the field as opposed to just general methodologies and speaking conceptually. Okay, cool. So a couple tools that TrueFuel provides or has that help bridge these gaps in communication and also help align with the best practices that we've talked about here so far. The TrueFuel driver scorecard. And I have a few screenshots here that I'm going to show, and I'll probably bounce around back and forth a little bit. So I apologize if the screen gets a little bit noisy, but intentionally to cover a couple of things here. The benefit of this TrueFuel driver scorecard is it allows drivers to self-serve their own performance data, meaning in between conversations that I might have with Gabby, my manager, I can track my own performance and set my own personal goals and say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to strive to get a 96% efficiency. How am I going to do that? I'm going to do that by focusing up on my idling and acceleration, right? And so in between conversations with my trainer, with my manager, I have visibility to my own performance data, and it's just my data. It's focused up just on me because it's linked directly to my driver ID I use to log into the ELD, or it's directly tied to my Pulse application, Pulse at Work. And so it's tailored to what I'm doing actually out there in the field. It's not generalized. And it's the same data that my manager, that Gabby's looking at in the back office here too. So we're maintaining that transparency of data and that increased visibility. Now, with the scorecard, we really put in a lot of thought and effort of how we answer the 3 critical questions that help quickly get action and understanding in the field. And so if you can see on my screen here, the first thing we need to answer is how am I doing? The second is where can I improve? And the third is how do I improve? That's the full feedback loop that anybody sort of tasked with changing behaviors or changing how we operate is going to have. How am I doing? Where can I improve? And how? And so right on the in-cab scorecard example here, we can see our true fuel score, 97%. This ties back to that efficiency that I said earlier. So only 3% of the fuel I'm consuming is being wasted due to inefficient behaviors. That's pretty good. And how am I doing with respect to my peers? I'm ranked number 12 out of 210. I'm pretty proud about that. It also enables me to set the personal goal of next week. I'm gonna crack that top 10. Absolutely. And then where can I improve? Immediately below that, quantified fuel waste in gallons. Based on my data, based on my trips in my day-to-day operations in gallons. So as I'm simply looking through this data, I can say, oh, jeepers, I lost 27 gallons last week just to a heavy throttle. Woof. All right. Well, uh, that's where I'm going to start with trying to get my efficiency up so that I can crack into that top 10 ranking and then get this number up as high as possible. Right. So closing the loop of how am I doing? Where can I improve? The last piece is how do I go about doing that? I've been driving this, for 30 years. I know what I'm doing, but how do I learn how to do things a little bit differently? So with TrueFuel directly in the in-cab scorecard, there's training tailored specifically to the four behaviors that have the biggest impact on fuel consumption: acceleration, speed, idling, and speed consistency. And now, as a driver, I can self serve access to that information directly from the scorecard here, which is awesome. Additionally, if, say, for example, Gabby calls me up as my manager and says, "Hey, Ethan, want to talk about acceleration?" Gabby can actually send these training modules or pieces of training directly to me virtually. She can show them to me in person, maybe as part of the training library that I built as a fleet. We have some, takeaways for the driver, whether it's a physical copy or virtual or digital in cab. But now I can self-serve this information. It's going to be consistent with the information I'm getting from my managers, from my driver trainers. And then again, jumping back here, I can go and use that to say, okay, hey, Gabby, I was going from Canandaigua to Rochester. Um, I ran into this while I was out there. What could I have done differently? What do you think? We can start to help shape an actionable conversation that's directly tied to that driver's day-to-day experience. Now, another piece too, really cool with this and unique with this, is that it's integrated with a turnkey incentive program. We've hosted a couple of other webinars on incentives and best practices for structure, execution, and recommendations. I won't get into that too much here, but if there's something in it for the driver, there's a high likelihood that they're going to buy into the program, or it'll help create some buy into the program. So something to consider. And there is an automated incentive program tied in with TrueFuel through 10th Street, which is super cool. If you'd like information on the previous webinars that I mentioned around incentive programs, best practices, and recommendations there, just let me know after we get off the call here. Okay, so we've solved a lot of what's needed in cab, and now we need to make it consistent with what the folks who are looking at data on the back office are seeing, right? From my experience, I've had clients that implement TrueFuel and just leave it up to the drivers to execute, to learn, to monitor their data, and there's success there. But there's even more success, and by success I mean even more fuel savings, when we have a secondary coaching process or secondary education process for drivers where we can use that driver's data and have a meaningful conversation about how we can improve based on their real world experience. And so what I'm showing here on the screen is a TrueFuel dashboard, and it's intended to close the same feedback loop as it does with a driver. With this view, we have a view across all of our drivers in the fleet, but we're answering the question of how are they doing? Also, how are we doing as an entire fleet? Where do we have opportunities to improve? You can see quantified fuel waste per behavior down here in this donut chart. And then how do we go about improving? There's actionable data that comes from either automated or reports directly into the portal that will help us glean how we can educate these drivers on changing their behaviors to adopt this technology to reduce the amount of fuel that they're wasting, which is really cool. Another key benefit here is that a lot of fleets are using, for example, Power BI, or uh, there's a number of AI dashboards that folks are using to simply comb through data and create dashboards. That's all available with True Fuel data through an integration with our data warehouse. So if you don't want your folks in the back office to have another portal that they have to look through, you can integrate and tie your Power BI reporting tool into grab True Fuel data and then generate your own reports and actions and automations off of that as well. And configurable turnkey incentive program, definitely available there. It's through 10th Street Rewards. It enables drivers to receive points for automated milestones achieved and redeem those points towards gift cards. So if you have more questions about that, let me know. Okay, so that is the foundational benefits of efficiencies gained, the program that we've seen a lot of success with over the last, my personally 15 years using True Fuel for a fuel program. What else can we do with it? There's some really cool experiments or pilot programs or sort of tests that I've helped support with our True Fuel clients using True Fuel data that have a meaningful impact. A really cool one here is a sample of a client who said, hey, predominantly sleeper trucks, I have these APUs, but I've heard that these lithium ion EAPUs are pretty impactful with reducing fuel waste. I want to do an experiment and I want to use True Fuel data to be able to measure the impacts, because True Fuel can quantify in gallons how much fuel is being consumed and wasted. And so that's exactly what we did here. They outfitted a handful of trucks with lithium ion EAPUs and then monitored the impact. They implemented them in the field. They communicated what they were doing. They trained, and then looked at the data of their program. And so the bars tie to the first axis on the left there, the first y-axis, and so that's actually fuel waste in gallons. Along the x-axis is going to be months, so we're looking at monthly time periods here. And then the line graph charts to the right, and that's going to be miles. And we needed to make sure that in this experiment that we were operating these trucks, because if they were simply sidelines, sure, yeah, they're going to lose less fuel due to idling because we're not just using it. But the total inverse happened. So outfitted the trucks with technology, train, and immediately started seeing a significant reduction in fuel wasted due to leaving the truck's engine on and idling the truck, primarily for cab comfort. So what we can see is even when we almost doubled our miles, our idle fuel waste dropped drastically to the tune of single digits of gallons per month, as opposed to triple digits of gallons per month, simply because we implemented and change management program and trained on this new technology that we had. We were able to prove that with the True Field data directly to gallons wasted due to idling. So that's a near-term example, one that we just helped a client with not too long ago. Also worked with other clients to say, hey, are my drivers more efficient in the daytime versus the nighttime? Meaning nighttime, overnights, there's a lot less traffic, so there's operational efficiencies that will be gained as it pertains to average, speed, and also less traffic, less slowdowns and acceleration events. Are my drivers more fuel efficient in the daytime and the nighttime? So that this fleet could do comparative analysis and identify if they had any clients or shipment schedules that they could push to the nighttime to try and gain those efficiencies there. That one was really cool. Another one, solar panels efficacy and impact on fuel consumption. Again, that one's going to be due to idle. because it's charging the batteries, right? And so we're using the engine to charge the batteries less because we're supplementing with solar. New drivetrain technology. We just spec'd out new trucks, and so they've got this, configuration compared to the older truck. Are my drivers more efficient in this new spec? So on and so forth. So a lot of value from simply having additional data from TrueFuel in addition to tracking our MPG. Our MPG is paramount. It's going to be a metric that we need to monitor. But in order to start taking action towards improving that, we need additional data, right? Okay, so a couple success stories. I'm being mindful of time here, and we're running towards the end. I want to leave time for questions. Two client success stories, two different approaches towards creating a successful program, two wildly successful programs. The first one here on the top, long tenure client, implemented a program leveraging TrueFuel coaching at first, and they just centered up on TrueFuel coaching. They communicated what the program was, how the technology worked, and what the ask for help was from the field to adapt to using this technology. And they saw a tremendous improvement, efficiency gains to the tune of 5%, meaning a 5% reduction in fuel consumption. Awesome. Started to get a little stagnant, and they said, hey, we think if we implement an incentive program, this one was monetary, cash incentive based on certain parameters, based on different job types and roles. If we implement an incentive program, we think it'll have a tremendous impact in continuing to get drivers to buy into the program. And it absolutely did. So about halfway through their program, they kicked off this incentive, and up and to the right from efficiency. This client, 10% improvement in efficiency, meaning 10% reduction in annual fuel spend, which is really, really significant. For this client, it works out to about 6,000 gallons per month saved. Larger fleet, shorter term client here, focused up on driver efficiency as their key program indicator, gave the tools to the driver to self-serve their own performance data, implemented a secondary coaching program, again, leveraging that driver-specific data. 3% reduction in annual fuel spend for that fleet. We're talking 11,000 gallons a month. They're already implementing some additional sort of program changes that they're on track to realize 6 or 7% savings. So double that, 11,000 gallons per month in savings of fuel. Okay, I have done a whole lot of talking. That is what I have prepped for today. Gabby, have we had any questions come in that I can help to answer?
Thank you, Ethan. Not as of right now. I don't see any,
Okay.
though. I know we do have a little bit more time in case they do come in.
We do, yeah. Certainly not trying to rush anybody off. Also, my contact info here on the next slide, Ethan Sweeney, ethan.sweeney@10street.com. Anybody out there, don't hesitate to reach out to me. If it's not clear from the past 50 plus minutes, I love talking fuel data. So if you have questions, ideas that you want to vet, or want to learn anything about successful programs, incentives, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm here and happy to help wherever I can. But if you do have a question that you'd like asked and answered right now, go ahead and fire it over, and we'll make sure to get that asked and answered. Cool, cool. Gabby, it looks like folks are dropping off. I want to thank everybody again for spending some time with me. I hope this was helpful. Like I said, I'm here and I would love to be a resource to you, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethan. And I hope everyone else has a good rest of their day.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.